Hello, my name is Anderson Steven from Bacatan Nursery. I would like to talk about orchids, introduction and characteristics. In the world, there are about 30,000 species, and in Colombia, there are about 4,275, being the country with the greatest biodiversity of orchids in the world. Of this, 1,572 are autonomous. That is, in other regions, in other countries, they do not exist. To begin, I would like to talk about the parts of each orchid and the types of orchids there are. Orchids could be monopodial or sympodial type. What is monopodial and what is sympodial? Monopodial are those orchids that only grow up vertical, as in the case of Phalaenopsis. Banded orchids, which no longer extend to the sides but only go upwards. Very different case happens with the Cattleyas. For example, this one, they are sympodial. That means, thanks to a rhizome, they are spreading from one side to the other. They can develop and generate the bulbs. The orchid can be divided into roots and bulbs. What are bulbs for? Thanks to this, over the years, they have developed these characteristics so that inside they can absorb water and in times of drought, they can use this water or liquid that they keep storing here in this part. This doesn't happen in this orchid, which has other types of bulbs, but in each bulb they store certain amounts of water for times of drought. They are designed to last many days without water, thanks to this wonder of nature. It is different with these orchids, which grow vertically. As they have bulbs, they need humidity constantly to be moistening their roots, and they absorb them. They sleep in their roots. Also, an important factor to take into account is that in the case of Phalaenopsis orchids, they absorb light through their roots to generate photosynthesis. Thanks to this, they receive inorganic matter to convert it into organic matter and be able to develop, as well as you can observe. I would also like you to observe this Miltonia orchid. This orchid also develops bulbs, which are smaller. These bulbs help them to store water, to the point that flowering is evident. It is only after 3 years of development that its flower can sprout. There are orchids that, from the moment they start to grow, can last up to 3 or 5 years, even 6, to generate their first flowering. Once the first is given annually, every 1 or 2 years, they continue their process. It can even be less than a year. As you can see, this orchid is called Phalaenopsis. It has a striking yellow with fuchsia color. I want to talk to you about her parts and about the flower in general. The orchid is thus divided, for example, into the rod, the bract, which is the division, the peduncle, which is this part, the ovary. The ovary is located in this area. As you can see, something curious about them is that when she is pollinated, the gestation time is the same for a woman. They have the same duration. It is a very curious fact. They last as long as a woman in pregnancy. The same time they have to develop their seeds. Another curious fact is that when this nugget or bottom is pollinated, it accumulates thousands and thousands and even millions of microscopic seeds that can only be reproduced in 2 ways. When it opens, it releases all this amount of microscopic seeds into the environment. And the only way to be able to be reproduced by means of a fungus has to be exclusively that this seed falls into that fungus in the tree in order to germinate and be able to develop. Otherwise, by in vitro culture medium. Scientific methods can be developed on a large scale. Thanks to this, through laboratories we can distribute and develop them more efficiently, in large proportions. Otherwise, in nature, because for every 10,000 of 6,000 microscopic seeds only one will prosper. since they fall into the fungus with little probability, while in the laboratory they can multiply easily. The orchid flower is divided into 3 petals and 3 sepals. In the case of the petals, one is especially designed to attract the insect or the pollinator. It is called the lip. The lip can be found in this area. It is designed exclusively to bring the pollinator. Some of the orchids usually emit a scent to attract them, for example, Stanophyria. This orchid, unlike the other, whose flower grows upwards, the Stanophyria grows downwards, as well as the Esineta. Many of these orchids have vanilla and chocolate colors, and many of them are used for their essence to create perfumes, including food. We, for example, consume the famous vanilla cookies, or we also purchase products such as vanilla essence to make food. It's all thanks to the orchid, because you can also make perfumes from it. Among other types of products, the orchid is widely used for cosmetology. All of them are used in other things. Inside the flower, as we were talking initially, we also find the gymnostemus or column. Inside the column, we can find the basidio, which is the point that is here. This basidio is usually viscous, and in it, the males are protected. In the males, the pollen is particularly located, where the mosquito enters and pollinates. It is also taken into account that they are hermaphrodites and can self-pollinate. Something I would like to say about the roots. Many times when we buy an orchid, we buy it with this transparent jar, and we wonder why. The reason is this. Since every plant requires lighting to be able to develop, in this case of orchids, to generate photosynthesis. When the orchid is in full flower, there is no problem in having them inside the dark container, as you can see, in this way. But if we want to develop our orchid a large bloom with showy leaves of one color of a certain size, we advise keeping them in transparent containers, so that they can absorb light and generate photosynthesis. Otherwise, they will have more opaque colors. Neither 2 nor 3 rods will come out as we see here, but it will be very different. It may be a rod, and the flowers may be weaker. I recommend cleaning them, so that it looks very beautiful visually. Lemon juice is added to the water to give it shine. All excess dust and grime is removed. This gives the leaves a striking color. You also have to take into account, as I mentioned, that there are orchids that can never be exposed to the sun. It happens that when they are epiphytes and are exposed to the sun, what we are going to do is burn them. It generates a stain when they are exposed for 1 or 2 hours. We are going to notice spots here and the leaves are going to be damaged. Therefore, I recommend and I reiterate, never leave epiphytic orchids in the sun, not even in the garden, since although they look very pretty there, they like a place where there is moderate ventilation better. The place where the ventilation is very strong, such as outside in the garden, here in Bogota, where gales occur, its flowers tend to hurt a lot. They like it better with moderate ventilation. Therefore, in the case of these orchids, keep them in home or in a place where there is not much draft. In the case of Cattleyas, it is recommended to have them on balconies because of their flowering, although it lasts about 3 or 4 weeks. It does require constant oxygenation, unlike Phalaenopsis. In the world of orchids, there are also species that are interesting and very common, such as, for example, we have here the little shoe orchid. She is very common and can be of several colors, yellow, red, among others. Its reproduction is simpler than Phalaenopsis one. She is constantly playing. As you can see, she already has 3 children currently. It is recommended that, in order to divide it, it be done once she loses her flower. Not now, because what that is going to do is damage the flower. What you are going to do is kill it. Then, when a few months pass, they are divided and can be transplanted into different pots, so that they can develop. In the case of little shoe orchids, they can be exposed to direct sun, and they can be constantly moistening every 3 or 4 days. If they are exposed to the sun, and if they are in the shade, it can be every 6 or 7 days. Well, that was it for today. I appreciate that any concern, doubt that you have, you can inform me. I will gladly assist you and I will be aware of any questions. This is my number. You can also follow us on our Facebook and Instagram social networks as Bacata Nursery.